Hello, rodeo fans. Welcome to episode 20 of the Short Round Podcast, the official podcast of the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association. I'm your host, Wacey Anderson, once again joined by Clay Creasy. Clay, 20 episodes. It's crazy to think that we've made it this far already, but yeah, we're approaching the end of the rodeo season and we're at the 20th episode of the Short Round. So it's been a whirlwind of a summer.
You put together quite a podcast over this last calendar year or just short of that, and I was glad to jump on board, and it's been a blast, and getting to recap the rodeos all summer long has been a lot of fun. So it's been cool. You really dive into what's happened each weekend and see, and this weekend was no different. There's some pretty neat stuff that really happens that you kind of dig into a bit. So good to
Yeah.
good to be a part of it all.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. There's been some cool moments happen throughout the year already, like Shea Beaver breaking her record or tying her record twice. There's been a ton of 90-point rides, Zeke Thurston and Virgil. Like you name it. There's been a ton of really cool moments as we approach the last few weeks of the season here.
There's just lots of contestants up and down the lineups that you see coming from out of nowhere or just continuing doing what they've been doing, and just lots of big time moments throughout at every rodeo, big and small.
Well, we skipped our half point episode last week just because the rodeo schedule kind of quieted down and gave ourselves a little break. But we have 2 weeks of rodeos to recap. That includes Dawson Creek and Cranbrook and Pincher Creek. So a couple creeks, a couple brooks. We'll get right into it here, Clay. So why don't you kick us off with the bareback ride?
Yeah, the bareback riding we had again, the tour rodeo in Dawson Creek. I mean, money wise, obviously you win that. That's a bit bigger hit than the other two, but it doesn't take away from the importance of all of those. And the current standings are kind of completed up to Dawson Creek. So I've got kind of where everybody's at there. And another guy, again, we've talked about him week in, week out, has been Straubs Jones. I saw he had a big moment down south here this week already and everything, and he had won Dawson Creek with an 88 on Kessler's payday there. Ended up second at Cranbrook as well, and right now he's sitting third in the standings after Dawson Creek. You got Clint Lay again. Didn't have any luck at Dawson Creek, but boy, the southwest little run there between Pincher and Cranbrook went really well for him. I mean, won them both. Gets Pincher Creek with American Thumper, which you can't ask for a nicer horse. Like honestly, it's just, yeah, you see that in the draw with your name on it, and there's just, as a bareback rider, yeah, that's the fluff right there. That's the one you want to get. And then Cranbrook, you had an old horse called Debbie Dallas there that between those two rodeos pulls 2,100 and some dollars and sitting second and after Dawson. But I mean, I didn't run the numbers to see where he is around Oren, but interesting note that I saw in the kind of the recap of the last weekend on the
Hmm.
CPRA's page is he's never been season leader before.
Yeah, that's quite the tidbit there.
Yeah, so suddenly that adds some intrigue to that race, and again, riding good. He's just
Seems like
won
he's
Strathmore as
healthy.
well. Oh yeah, he's hitting his stride here at the end, and again coming into Lethbridge this weekend, and and everything else. I mean, getting into Armstrong, it's anybody's game. I mean,
It's crazy.
any of those
Yeah.
those guys that have got 20 some one right now in the bareback riding, they could be number one by the end of it. So
Hmm.
good race.
Hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be cool, and I think kind of a common theme as we get through kind of like previewing the end of the season and getting to CFR stuff. Anybody going in with a kind of head start as a season leader is going to have an advantage of the CFR, and then the amount of money available for the bubble contestants over the next week and a half, I guess, with Lethbridge and Armstrong and Merritt and Langley. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes down because when speaking of the CFR, with that one less perf, it's going to be harder to catch the guys and gals who have the head start going into the finals.
Yeah, a slow start is just going to be that much more detrimental to
Hmm.
anybody that kind of takes that time to get going and everything. And again, it's going to be wrapping up on the Saturday night, right? There's
Yeah.
some people that I don't know if they go out and get right with the Lord there Sunday morning and showed up and just really made a case for himself that last perf. But yeah,
Mhm.
it's to have that shortened up, your margin for error is just even less.
Well, and that's gonna take us to steer wrestling, Clay. A kind of a spoiler, almost a spoiler alert. Where like oh, well, yeah, I guess spoiler's probably the best word to describe it. But Bryn Roy split the win in Cranbrook, placed in Dawson Creek, and he split the win in Pincher Creek. So he picked up $4,500. And yeah, he was, as you have noted here, he was in the top 30 heading into the weekend. But it's kind of, you could see more of these types of people pop up, like playing spoiler, like some maybe people who aren't in the race or a little bit outside, maybe picking up the wins and making it that much more difficult for those folks trying to get in or get that season leader title.
There's just so many steer wrestlers in Canada and North America that can just jump out of nowhere, even if their year hasn't been going well and
Hmm.
get it figured out. And uh, Bryn is he's a little different scenario than anybody else you're going to find. I mean, not very many people have a world champion steer wrestler dad
Hmm.
who have also been CFL football players. So Bryn, uh, yeah, I can't say I know him real well, but the first time I introduced myself to him, he had come out on the East Run when a long time ago I was still riding novice, and I guess while they were in Morris, a few of the steer wrestlers got to leg wrestling, and well, leg wrestling somebody who is a trained and very fit football player can be very detrimental because he ended up actually breaking a guy's femur. It was quite
That's
the
crazy. What? He broke a
it,
guy's femur?
he did. It was
Jesus.
so I'd heard about this and run into him in Kennedy at the dance the night before I actually ended up breaking my leg. And
Damn.
it's like, so nice to meet you. How's he doing? And you could tell. I mean, he's a great guy, heck of a guy. I mean,
Hmm.
again, athlete first and everything, but yeah, he's torquey. And another interesting note again was the year I was going to school down in the States. He
Hmm.
was kind of at a tipping point, had been playing college football and everything down there. But again, that rodeo bug has always been there for him. He's always
Hmm.
kind of been interested in making that stride, but had actually thought about starting rodeo in there and maybe going to college, but continued on with football and then yeah, like I said, had played for the Montreal Alouettes there for a little while and still does a lot of training for athletes and everything on the side. But him and his brother have been really hitting the road and trying to get going. Denver's
Hmm.
been at it for a while and they're just yeah, they're getting some ground made up here and I think this is just going to light that fire for him and
Hmm.
it's great to see.
Well, and even you could like, getting that confidence boost kind of opens the door as we head into September. I guess something we really haven't talked about is how the September rodeos are going to count for the 2025 season standings. So anything after Armstrong and up to the CFR and the Maple Leaf finals, but those rodeos also count for the Maple Leaf finals standing. So it's kind of a confusing thing, but at the end of the day, for a guy like Bryn Roy going into the fall with a big amount of confidence, he could get out to a really good head start heading into 2025.
Absolutely. It's just momentum's good at any time of the year,
Mhm.
unless it's the very last rodeo and you got nothing for months, right? So he's hitting his stride and again for him as a professional steer wrestler, it's a big turning point and just a cool moment to see for him as again
Mhm.
he's in his 30s, just kind of getting to be going, but it's kind of interesting. You'll hear at the NFR a lot of those American steer wrestlers were college football players
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
things like that. It doesn't happen so much up here, right? But football in Canada, I think, is you're seeing some more competitors break through. I mean, not all of them rodeo, but again, that athletic background is never a disadvantage, I
It pays
believe.
dividends. But look at a guy like Johnny Webb, man, his hockey career and how like he was kind of known as an enforcer or whatever, but like yeah, and that athletic background plays such a huge like play in any event that you can think of.
No doubt. I mean, whether it's physically or mentally, if you know how to compete, that translates.
That's yeah, 100%. Okay, saddle bronc riding, Clay. Your signature event. Lucas Moxa made up some ground on Zeke Thurston, and Dawson Dom is making a push for the CFR.
For sure. It was really interesting. There wasn't much crossover. Like again, there's just so many guys riding right
Hmm.
now and going. There really wasn't a big notable like multiple big
Yeah.
check weekend. It was kind of you had your winners and that was that. And
Hmm.
Lucas Moxa, yeah, you win the tour rodeo there in Dawson Creek, that blue chip. I mean, again, Lucas, we've talked about it in
Hmm.
previous episodes. He's just riding so well all year,
Hmm.
and it's translated tremendously up here in Canada. Again, sitting second, got $44,000 won. Like it's in second. I mean, and
Yeah, it's
only the bronc
crazy.
rider, and just carries it on there with a good horse of Calgary's that they brought up there, and Dawson Dom, yeah, he's needing a fight. He's
Hmm.
in the midst of that fight. So that win in Pincher Creek rode Outlaws Night Vision there, a Night Jacket descendant of Outlaws that they've got, and
Hmm.
again was sitting 12th before the weekend. Interesting note about Night Vision. This is now the third rodeo this year that they've won on Night Vision with an
Dang,
85.5. Leighton Green did
consistent.
that twice in Wainwright and Bonneville. Yeah, big, strong horse. Really, really
Hmm.
caught my attention at Panoka and has been he leaves hard.
Hmm. Hmm.
You got to be there right off the bat and get things going with him.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like we talk about that head start part going into the finals. Like Zeke's after it's all said and done, Zeke's probably gonna have a $10,000 head start on everybody, which is a round win, and he has to buck off and not place in the round. It's just a crazy. It's cool to see the amount of money that's out there being won. It truly is. It's great to see. So, the breakaway open, Chelsea Moore, big win in Pincher Creek, 1.8, knocking on the door of Shea Beaver's record there, but picks up $2,300. Gonna be in a kind of in a fighting position to get into the top 12 there, Clay, and then yeah, it's kind of you're gonna see these races unfold after, especially heading into Armstrong, like after Lethbridge is said and done. Like it's gonna be within hundreds, maybe even tens of dollars to get into some of these top 12s.
It's always interesting to see like the tightest races out there, and
Yeah.
and even like last year in the PRCA, seeing a challenge that
Hmm.
occurred in the standings that
Hmm.
was reversed twice. I mean, you,
Crazy.
you never hope to get down to that. And again, we don't have the official rodeo count situation
Hmm.
here. I mean,
Hmm.
if the only issue that could arise is somebody didn't get to their count
Yeah. Yeah.
somehow, but we don't have quite that the circumstances that led to that situation. But absolutely, Chelsea again. We had talked about her in the last episode about winning in the barrel racing,
Hmm.
and
Yeah. She's a familiar
she's
face.
she's been just really having a solid year on both sides of things, and just again, you can't say enough about her all around ability
Hmm.
and again, to jump out there at Pincher to be 1.8, placed at her hometown rodeo there in Dawson Creek, and it's anybody's game there right now from 20th up.
Yeah. It's
There's
crazy. It's crazy,
it's gonna
man.
be
It's gonna be so
again,
much fun.
it's a gunfight.
Yeah. Well, and going from the bottom of the breakaway standings to more of the top of it, McKenna Shower had a huge weekend picking up the winning Cranbrook, second in Pincher Creek for $2,500. So it's just gonna get her in the mix, knocking on the door for that season leader title. So it's top or bottom of the standings. Just take your pick of which race you want to follow. It's gonna be awesome until the end.
It's a tight race. It seems like the tallest breakaway roper has been above the rest of them all year in Laurie Saunders. I know her brother Rob there from my university time, and don't know Laurie really well, but she's just been consistent
Yeah.
at the top of that standings. We haven't had a chance to really give her a shout out here because there hasn't quite been the moments that some of the other
Hmm.
girls have had, but just again, you see her name all throughout
All
there, and
over. Yeah.
the top ones, McKenna, she's a hand. She
Hmm.
knows how to rope, heads well, breakaway ropes well, like just really a tough competitor. So yeah, the top of the standings is just as
Yeah.
tough of a fight here as the 12th spot is.
Yeah, and I feel like the breakaway roping has been as competitive as it's been in Canada, as we've talked about a tons on here. But one thing I wanted to bring up, they're the ladies breakaway ropers are doing their Facebook auction right now to raise money for the CFR. So if you have a chance, check that out. There's some really cool stuff in there. There's Flames tickets, there's clinics, there's anything you can imagine, and all the money goes towards helping these gals get paid at the CFR. So check that out and help them out a little bit. So Clay, that's gonna go to the tie down rope, and a guy we've talked about a little bit, Strand Dunham had a big weekend. Is this like, well, Strand's a Saskatchewan boy, right? Am I off there? And then
Nope, you're right there. Yeah.
I should know. I'm a fellow provincial person. Anyways, Jesse Pesco also had a big weekend. So two Sasky boys having big weekends on the road last week.
Strand's a young guy. I remember Logan kind of talking about him
Yeah, yeah,
trying
he
to
had some really
kind of make
good
that
points about him.
transition over here and just the change from say your semi-professional circuits where again in the calf roping they do run a shorter line. That was basically my bread and butter on that was I remember winning the rodeo and hitting the one time and I think the guy before me I thought he just did absolutely tore down the barrier and I was like he got out okay we can do this and so that's kind of the name of the game a lot of the time. Whereas again, you get to these pro rodeos, you got to have the horsepower that can score, and then let those calves out and get to them and in time and set up your run. Again, the timing and everything there takes a lot. And I mean, you see here, I mean, winning Dawson Creek and Cranbrook and
Mhm.
placing it at Pincher, I mean, almost made 5 grand and
Big
again, he's
money.
on the inside right now, and again, he's got a lot of momentum going, so you just can't count him out. And again, you get to the CFR, that score does get a little shorter. The goes are quick, so these young guys that got nothing to lose, yeah, it's going to be tough. Whereas Jesse Popesco, he's a veteran.
Hmm.
The Pascals are a roping family. They know how to handle things, and he's been there, done that before, but knows he's got to put in the work here to get there, and he definitely did with again a win at Pincher and second in Dawson Creek. He was sitting on the outside, sitting 14th after Dawson, and again it's a big fight, but again, $4,300 over 2 weekends. That's a huge jump. So
It's
Jesse's
wild.
Jesse's getting there.
Man, and yeah, I'm just looking at the standings here, and obviously there's no updates after Pincher and Cranbrook, but like if you're 22nd, 23rd, you still kind of have an outside shot of getting in if you have a couple big weeks here. So it's gonna be I'm just so excited to see how it all shakes out.
No doubt. And again, like Jesse, you got Ben Robinson, Steele DePoli. I mean, those
Mm,
guys are all they're all going
they're all
and
well,
so,
even
and you're pulling for all of them, right?
yeah, yeah.
You're wanting to see all of them have that success and get there. And so it'll be and again, you don't have anybody in the calf roping that's not gonna get their rodeos. So
Hmm.
it's well, yeah, see if Shane Hansen gets
Shane's
there
tough for
enough.
Shane. He's gotta get a couple down here, but
Yeah, but
yeah, it's gonna be wild. Gonna be wild. Okay, let's go right into the barrel racing, Clay. Jaden Wilson had a big weekend. Justine Elliott, she's no familiar to be no stranger to being at the top of the leaderboard. Those gals had a couple big weeks here, picking up some checks along the way.
you bet. There, Jaden Wilson there from Gleason there. Likely, I was meaning to check with the Yule crew there to see. I'm guessing that's a connection to the Wilson rodeo family and stock contract and outfit. And again, winning Pincher Creek and placing at Cranbrook, you
Hmm.
again, she makes $2,300. That barrel racing again was similar to that saddle bronc riding, and there wasn't the huge win, and even for Justine winning Dawson, I mean, when they pay so many holes, it really kind of it didn't make as big a payout as some
Hmm.
of our other events do. So yeah, they spread the money around a fair bit there, and we see Jaden. I mean, she's sitting sixth, looking to make that finals
Hmm.
and everything. Whereas Justine was 16th after Dawson. A couple of girls again not going to get their rodeos. So again, she's in that scramble there for the barrel
Yeah,
racing
it's
as
gonna be
well, and
tight.
it's tough. I mean, you got to think. I mean, those entries in the barrels and the breakaway. There's so many of them that are competing.
Hmm.
they're all so tough, and it's any of their game here, and
Hmm.
chances are aplenty going
Oh,
down the last
it's
few
gonna
rodeos.
be it's gonna be wild, man. And then I guess I always forget that Langley has the barrel racing in their event, so that's another $15,000 on the table, just an added money to be won out there. So it's gonna be, man, it's gonna be so exciting. I'm stoked about this. Okay, moving down the line, team roping. We got Cash Bonnet, Logan Spady picking up some wins, and then you said you sent me a text about this the other day. Tyrell Filelli picked up a bunch of checks with different partners over the last few weeks. So tell us the story there, Clay.
So again, Cash and Logan, they snuck in again to our last episode there because they had won Lacrete and had a little
Hmm.
bit of luck in kind of the weekend before Lacrete there, and then sure enough, jump out and they won Dawson Creek as well, and then we're in the lead at Pincher Creek there after their performance and ended up finishing there in second place with a 5 flat, 5-7 to win Dawson Creek. They were on the outside before Lacrete, but
Hmm.
they're fairly safe in there now. We're sixth and seventh after Dawson, and I mean 4,200 and some bucks after those three rodeos. That's going a long ways. And again, they're up and down the road, heading south. I mean, making money up and down. And I saw actually Logan's cousin Ty had gotten married here 2 weeks ago, and my favorite picture from all of it was 20 minutes to wedding, but got to finish this game of cornhole before we can get going because it's that Spady family. There's so many brothers and cousins that are so close in age that they have a lot of fun over there, and it's yeah,
It's
it's
good
just
stuff. That's
wouldn't
awesome.
expect anything else.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and then
Yeah.
tell us a story about Tyrell. You said in our text he placed with three different partners at three different rodeos, and that's going to help move him along the line, get closer to the CFR.
You bet. And again, Tyrell and his regular partner Roland, from the sounds of it, I'd asked somebody about what the situation was, and it just happened. I think Roland had a wedding to go to last weekend, so he couldn't enter up. They had finished second at Dawson Creek with a 5-9. And then Tyrell drew up with Walker Galloway there from Pinoka for a 4-8 to win Cranbrook. And since the other story I had asked about was Dustin Bird again, kind of like we'd thought. He just was a little more comfortable with what the amount of money has had won going into the CFR than his regular partner Jeremy Bueller had. So Jeremy, we've seen, has been winning a bunch of money with Trey Galley, and
Hmm.
but Tyrell got a hold of Dustin and said, "Hey, you want to rope at Pincher Creek?" And sure enough, they were 4-3 to win that one as well. So, I mean, suddenly Tyrell, he won 5,500 and some dollars there, and was sitting 13th after
Hmm.
Dawson. Junior Negata doesn't have he went to Pinoka.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've got that 13th was really like 12th already,
Hmm.
and you win
Hmm.
those two rodeos,
You're
and
laughing.
suddenly Roland's going to have to get rolling here to make it happen. And I mean, Tyrell, there's nothing can't say about him from the team roping in. I mean, he was a high school champion
Hmm.
at the national level. He's 3-time Canadian champion. I mean, him and him and Trevor Jones took over team roping Canada here the last couple of years, and
Hmm.
they've done a tremendous job for the sport of team roping. And again, you can't beat him on the heel end. He's such a great healer there.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be, man. Again, like we've really hammered this point home, but it's gonna be so exciting to watch these races unfold as we head into the last weekend here. That's gonna move us into the bull riding, best event of them all, in my opinion, but that's not biased at all. Yeah. So Ashton Solly picked up a huge win in Dawson Creek. Like he's a guy who made the CFR last year, won a couple rounds. He really wants to be back there. I was doing a video for Nick Tetz at his wedding yesterday, and Ashton is one of his groomsmen, and we were talking about it, just how there's so much he was the confidence that he had was that he was no, you could tell there was no stress on him. Like he knew that there was still a lot of money available on the table, and there's a really good chance he can make his way to Edmonton. So watch out for Ashton as we get into these last few rodeos. He's kind of heating up a little bit. He's made some good drives over the last few weeks, so it'll be fun to watch him. And then the reigning champ Edgar Durazo got some money won in Cranbrook, and he's one of those guys. Like I feel like in the bull riding, okay, I'm gonna pull up the standings here. We're talking about this in bull riding. Like you got like where's Edgar? Edgar's at 19,000. Jake's at 44. It's gonna be tough for Edgar to catch him maybe before the end of the season, but the way Edgar rides in at the CFR, like you can never count him out because he's probably gonna ride five out of five bulls like pretty easily. So it's gonna be fun to watch the bull how the bull riding shakes out too. Like I'm just once again I'm so stoked to see how the season shakes out and finally get into the CFR and see how things play out for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah, no, those bull riders again, you got to have the shortest memory of all of the
Oh
events.
man.
In every any event you have to, but in bull riding again, because it's in the ground money again played such a big thing there last weekend. Edgar was one of two bull riders to ride there in Cranbrook, and I mean, I had it on here, but Lonnie West hasn't had much luck this year, but he was the only guy to stay on in Pincher Creek.
Pincher, yeah, yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it's you get to Armstrong and say a bunch of guys buck off. Boy, that season
Well,
leader
so
race could get a lot snugger.
it's interesting. And then you mentioned a guy like Lonnie, like he pulled like almost 4 grand, I think, was it out of Pincher, wasn't it? I think that's what it was. Here, I'll pull the results up. One sec, one sec, one sec. One sec, one sec, one sec. Sorry. I have it. I got it. I got it. I
Nice.
got it. Pincher Creek, bull riding, Lonnie West. 3,800 bucks, so almost 4,000. And then between Lethbridge, Armstrong, Merritt, and then obviously Langley, and I guess Lonnie has tough won't really make the tour finals. But anyways, he could still sneak in there if he goes on a heater and wins a bunch of rodeos. Like it's just a crazy thought, but you never know how it could happen. So I'm excited to see Lonnie back on the road. He's been battling injuries for a couple of years, and he's a good old buddy of mine. So a little shout out to our boy Lon Dart.
Yeah, it's good to see Lonnie get going and yeah, they're just down the road here and
Yeah, you're your friendly neighbors.
yeah, every now and then we cross paths at the post office or the grocery store.
Right on. Cool, Clay. Well, I think that's going to do it for the top of the show here. It's good to catch up and get everybody caught up to speed on what's been happening down the rodeo trail. I'm super excited for our guest on episode 20 this week. We got Mr. 3000 himself, Dave Poulsen. So stay tuned for that, and we'll catch you on the other side. All right, welcome back to the short round. I'm super stoked to welcome this week's guest onto the show for episode 20, kind of our first milestone episode of the short round, but I figured this would be a great time to bring on Mr. 3000 himself, Dave Poulsen. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks, guys.
Oh, it's been good. I was kind of like trying to him and Han who I wanted to bring on next, and like I said, it's a milestone show, and then I heard you hit this big milestone in your career, so I think it's kind of a fun way to celebrate two. Maybe our milestone's a little bit more minor than yours, but it's fun to celebrate two at once.
Few less
Yeah,
zeros.
Yeah,
it doesn't feels like a long time.
yeah. That's I kind of want to start there. 3,000 performances, like that's it's quite the record, let alone the record itself. But keeping track of that many perfs is that something that you've just done over the years, or how were you able to
Well,
keep track of
well,
that many?
yeah, it's kind of crazy the way it started. I actually, from the very beginning, my very first rodeo, I started saving the programs.
Mm.
And so I had boxes and boxes of programs, rodeo programs down the basement for the longest time. And I don't know, it was a few years ago. And I remember, I think it was Scott Schiffner, but I'm not positive. And I remember a bull rider, I believe it was Scott, saying, in my career, I got on 1,228 bulls, whatever the number
Hmm.
was. And I thought, how cool is that that guy knows that?
Hmm.
And so I thought, I'm going to go back through the programs and just see if I can figure out roughly where I was at. Now, this is a few years ago, so I was at maybe 22, 2,300 back then.
Dang.
And then from that point on, I just kind of kept track and I thought, I'm a baseball guy.
Yeah, yeah.
In baseball, if you get 3,000 hits, it's kind of meaningful. And I thought, I don't know if 3,000 performances is meaningful or not. I don't know if very many people have done that, certainly in Canada. So I thought, shoot, I'm going to
Heck
see if I
yeah.
make it to that. And it turned out that it happened on a weekend in Pincher Creek, one of my favorite rodeos. So that made it special as well.
Oh, that's cool. It's kind of, and one thing I think that would maybe get overlooked in that is the amount of time in those performances. Like I've sat through 5, 6 hour performances in my short rodeo career, I can only imagine how long some of those purses you had to sit through were. So calculating the man hours would be another task in itself.
Well, I actually, it's funny you mention that because I'm thinking 3,000 performances. Let's say it averaged out at 2.5 hours a
Yeah,
per,
yeah.
roughly. Okay, so that's 7,500 hours. You divide that by 24 hours. I've spent like a year of my life in announcer stands, or almost a year, and so yeah, that's a fair amount of time. All right.
Well, and so I feel like there's a lot of announcer stands out there that have recently been updated in the past maybe 5-ish years. I can only imagine what some of the announcer stands looked like back in the day.
It's funny because when I go back through and go back to the early days, and sometimes it wasn't even announcer stand. I announced rodeos sitting on a fence on the side
Dang.
of the arena and talking about what I was looking at, and I always remember too, and Clay, you'll remember this, at rodeos where back in the days of the cassette tape recorder, and okay, everybody stand up for O Canada, and then stick your microphone in front of the cassette player. Like, I mean, we have progressed just a little bit with the music and everything but those were fun days, and I darn sure wouldn't want to trade any of them. And the cool thing is the very first performance I ever worked was alongside Warren Cooper at
Wow.
Medicine Hat, and the legend and the Hall of Famer, and great voice and everything. So that kind of started the whole thing, and that. So I remember that, and that was kind of a nice way to get it kicked off.
There's so many different ways I want to go right now, but
Yeah.
with the so going back to like announcing and having to do the music yourself, and we've talked about how it came a long way, but how long did it take you to get that perfected? Because this brings up a time in Rocky Mountain House. You and I got in a little bit of trouble for this, but I had to cover you when you went to the PBR. I announced a couple of events on the Saturday performance, I think it was, but having to announce and do the music and keep everything straight was like an impossible task to me. So I just wanted, how long did it take you to get that done? And I mean, it has evolved, like you said, but it's still not an easy thing to do.
Well, in fairness, the simple truth is there wasn't much music,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't have to do an awful lot of that. Basically, it was the old Canada thing, and then
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't like today where you've got the music in behind the rodeo, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a soundtrack going on while you're broadcasting. So it wasn't that onerous in that sense, other than the cassette player and the bad copy of O Canada and all of that sort of thing. And then of course the odd time it wouldn't work, and
Oh.
so a couple of times I had to jump in and sing the anthem, and that was never never amazing either. So yeah, there darn sure have been some moments along the way.
Oh, it's always funny when you get to hear. Not funny. It's always awesome when you get to see the announcer sing "Oh Canada." I think I had Doug Young had to sing it one time, and Lashburn at the PBR. I think Brett Gardner had to sing it at Tanner's house one time. It's kind of a fun little element added in when you guys have to help belt out the anthem for everybody.
Yeah, well, and the other thing that I was fortunate too, because a lot of announcers, and I think of guys like Brett Gardner and Dustin,
Mm,
and Dustin Edwards, and some of the other guys that I've worked with, when they started out, they had to pack sound. They
mm-hmm,
brought the speakers, they brought all the
mm-hmm.
microphone, I did that exactly once, and that was at Rocky Mountain House years and years ago. And Reg Kessler at that time was the stock contractor, and he said, like you to come up here, you need to bring the sound. And I'm packing these speakers up these stairs, and I'm
Oh,
thinking,
it's not an easy setup there.
oh, it was just gosh awful. And I said, I will do this exactly once. If they need a sound guy, I'm not that guy. I'll stay home before I will pack this stuff again. And so I did that only one time, and thank goodness.
Well, and so talking about that, is a good segue because talking about the evolution of the sound guy and the sound system and bringing that all these new elements into rodeo and the production, like how has that changed the game for you over these 3,000 performances? Like it's a whole new world essentially.
Oh yeah, it's so much, the whole total experience
Mm,
for the audience. I've always thought of rodeo from the perspective of the people I'm talking to,
hmm hmm
and the audience out there, and that goes back again to Reg Kessler. I remember very early on in my career, he said, "Listen," he said, "this isn't about you, and this isn't about me. And it isn't even about those cowboys getting on those bucking horses.
mm,
It's about those people over in the grandstand over there. Without them, we don't have a rodeo." And I
hmm
always I've always kind of thought of it in that sense.
Mhm.
So for me to see the evolution of the sound and create this amazing experience. I mean, the visual experience has always been great. It's the cowboys and
Mhm,
cowgirls in the
mhm.
arena. That's awesome. But the audio experience on top of that, it's part rock concert, it's part country concert, it's part rodeo. I mean, there's just so many elements to it. And for the person to be able to sit out there in that grandstand and enjoy all those elements,
Mhm.
and the sensual elements that comprise rodeo now, pretty cool. And I'm so glad that it's happened while I'm still a part of the industry, because it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, it's pretty cool that you look even like the production of the CFR last year, the work you do at the PBR. You're heading to Lethbridge this weekend, like Keenan Vine and that crew down there. They do an outstanding job of rodeo production. Like, I had Keenan on a few episodes ago, and we had a really nice conversation about that. How like, the experience has been enhanced so much by the level of production that's been, like, even just in Canada. Like, I think there's a lot of ways we set the bar in some of the production aspects on our kind of our more mid-level rodeos, you could say. But it's pretty cool to see how it's all changed, even in my time in rodeo.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's evolving, kind of as we speak. There's going to be more and more things. Like another element, of course, is the replay screen, which
Mm-hmm.
that's another whole, which adds to the visual. And then, it's so nice because we're used to, as sports fans, seeing replays,
Mm-hmm.
and so now we can actually offer that to our rodeo fans as well, and maybe analyze that ride that was why was it 90 points. Well,
Mm-hmm.
hey, take a look at this, and so that's another element that I'm
Yeah.
sure didn't exist back in those early days.
So
Yeah, I
3,000.
remember
Oh,
I
go ahead,
remember
sorry.
like just it was such a big thing to see like Skeeter with his board,
Yeah.
Oh
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
scoreboard
the
there for
board.
the longest
Yeah.
time, right? I mean, to see your name up on there and see all the little yellow things going tick 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 tick, right? Whereas now, I mean, you see guys again. Sean Metuis was really one that I feel really started bringing that video board around. And but I know, yeah, like you'd said, as Keenan talks, I mean, with the TV element of things, and the production level of every moment, and just building that atmosphere, rodeo is just in such a cool spot.
Yeah, well, you're right, and Skeeter and Patty Cooper, of course, was another one, and I went to a lot of places where Patty was, and uh, I'll tell you a little story that one of my favorite announcing guys was, of course, Jack Danes, and I think he was a favorite of a lot of people, because the great thing about Jack was you didn't know what he was going to say, because he didn't know what he was going to say, and so you were always listening and waiting for Jack. So Patty Cooper will recall this story, and probably tells it better than I do. But Jack decided this one year, and it was a little different element on the music. He decided he's going to hire a fiddle player to
Oh.
fill in the moments, a live fiddle player to fill in the moments when there was a breakdown or whatever, whenever we needed it. So and so pretty soon, sure enough, partway through the rodeo, and of course Jack ran the rodeo from the microphone, and so we're going along, and suddenly there was some kind of a breakdown, and immediately Jack's going, "Where's the fiddler? Where's the fiddler?" And Patty Cooper, great sense of humor, she said, "I guess the fiddler's on the roof, Jack." And Jack Danes, now Jack probably didn't get to a lot of Broadway musicals in his career, and he's going, where's that? Get him down off the roof. He's not. Nobody's supposed to be up on that roof. Well, I mean, the whole announcer stand just fell apart. It was just one of those legendary Jack Danes moments, orchestrated by Patty Cooper. It was a fun one.
That's a funny, that brings up a funny one. So a funny question with your 3,000 perfs. What's like the most strange, craziest, obscure moment from one of those perfs that you can remember?
Oh my gosh,
It's a loaded question almost.
there'd be I'll tell you, um, I think about a PBR, for example, in Stavely one time. It was very early on in the Glen Keeley Memorial history, which has now reached, I think, 20 some odd years, something
Yeah,
like
it's been
that.
around for a while.
And we just had another great one here the other day, but this was early on, and we were just getting ready to start the thing, and we get word that there's been a a serious highway traffic accident, and the ambulance had to leave. And of course, you can't have an event without an ambulance in
Mm-hmm.
attendance. That ambulance did not return for, I'm going to say, 2.5 hours. And so we stayed. Everybody in the crowd stayed. By the time the thing started, everybody was feeling pretty good because the bar had been open the whole time. And it
Yeah,
was
don't
one of
need
the
an ambulance for a
wildest.
bar.
I mean, you talk about a rowdy crowd, and we were still riding bulls after midnight. And the stuff that we tried to do in that 2 hour period to fill time just to get to when the ambulance returned, I'll never forget that. That was one of the wild and western ones.
You'd have to get creative in those moments.
Oh,
Just like thinking of telling you probably exhausted all the jokes you ever had.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, we ran through a number of things. I remember Scott Byrne was fighting bulls there, and he was down in the arena leg wrestling with somebody, and it was just whatever we could think of to pass a little time. It was pretty western. So,
Oh, that's
but there's
funny.
been some, there are those crazy moments, and then there's some difficult moments when
Mm-hmm.
somebody's hurt or an animal gets hurt. It doesn't happen often, thankfully, but when it does, you're always feeling down, and then there's all those funny moments, like the one I talked about, that you always remember all those
Mm-hmm.
great moments.
Well,
It's been a lot of fun.
well, you bring up the Glen Keely that you this past weekend a bull got loose, and we saw Dustin Goddard was quick on the case, and then even Jared Parsons got in the action. So there's never a shortage of fun at the Glen Keely.
Jared Parsonage, if there's a guy who epitomizes the word cowboy more than
Oh,
Jared Parsonage, I haven't met that person.
yeah, it's
And
crazy.
so yeah, and we had a really good. They're not called pickup man, safety man in the arena on horseback, and he raced out immediately and is after this bull. And pretty soon, Jared goes and gets on the guy's other horse and goes off and help him. And pretty soon, the two of them had it under control. So yeah, there are those moments for sure.
I was saying to Jen after the bull run was over, I was like, if there's any place for a bull to get out and it not be a huge problem, it's probably Stavely, Alberta.
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
There's
Yeah,
a
they
lot of
could go
cowboys
for a long
around.
time.
Yeah.
They could go for a long time and just enjoy the pasture.
Oh man, it's awesome. But so again, I kind of want to ride the 3000 perf theme, but what are some of the favorite moments you had along the way, whether it be people, rides, rodeos, any of that stuff? What are some things that stand out for you throughout that time?
Well, you think about championships, you think about people that you really kind of always wanted to win a championship, and
Hmm.
they finally did, I can remember Oren Larson when he won it in 2019, and I remember the crowd just going crazy,
Hmm.
um, with every jump of that ride. And I talked to him afterwards. I said, "Did you hear that? Could you feel the energy?" And he said, "Yeah, I could feel it." I mean, obviously he's not listening to the crowd, but it was, those are such special moments. That the moments that I remember the most are the ones that happen in the arena,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
basically I'm a fan. That's what I am. I
Yeah.
I get to be paid to be a rodeo fan, and
Mhm.
more than that, I get to talk about the stuff that I'm a fan of. So here's these amazing things going on in the arena, and I get to tell people about that and share that with them. Uh, there's that's the stuff that I guess I just really really love. And
Hmm.
anytime you have a 95-point bull ride by Cody Snyder at the Canadian Finals Rodeo, or and all of those amazing historic moments, if you're a part of that, yeah, even a small part, often an announcer stand somewhere talking about it, pretty cool, and you never forget them.
You get to see the highest of highs and lowest of lows for a lot of people, and there's big moments like even I've talked about this lots over a bunch of interviews now, but Zeke getting bucked off in the first round of the CFR last year, like that's got to be the surprise of the century almost.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and I remember initially thinking, well, gee, is it over, like, for him? I mean, and
yeah.
then you think to yourself, well, wait a minute, no, we're talking about Zeke Thurston here. It is
Mm-hmm.
not over, and it certainly wasn't.
Certainly
So
wasn't. Cool. Well, Clay, you got a list of questions here. I don't want to steal all the thunder here, so
Yeah,
you
no,
jump
for
in, buddy.
sure. Talking about the rodeo memories, for myself, I can still remember you were announcing at the first Wild Rose finals that I competed at in the novice. They invited me there because I hadn't stayed on anything all year, and sure enough, kept that streak going. And I still always laugh because I remember in the years after that, you kind of, well, when we first saw this kid, we weren't too sure how he was going to do. He's looking at me still going, like, look at that.
I was proud of you, Clay. You hung in there and became a pretty darn good bronc rider. So that was good on you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And for myself, again, I wanted to kind of get into some of the other stuff that you've obviously made a career in, and starting back again, my first experience, even before meeting you, was knowing that my parents had attended Lakeland College back when you were involved there, and just tell us a little bit about what that role was like back in the day.
Well, Lakeland College, I loved it because I was teaching people like you, basically young adults and sometimes even older adults who came back to school or whatever, and I got to be the rodeo coach as well, or one of the co-coaches of the rodeo team. So that was a wonderful experience, and I was teaching communications, and had a lot of fun, especially with public speaking, which is essentially it was called creative speaking, but it was public speaking, and you could always tell. And my wife Barb says the same thing, that you could always tell the kids who'd come through 4-H, because public speaking, big part of the 4-H program. I'd get these students in my classes, and you could always tell the 4-H grads, because they weren't shy about getting up in front of an audience and talking. But the other ones, oh my gosh, it was like, I'd rather jump off a building than have to stand up in front of these 11 people and say something. And it was so that was, but no, Lakeland College was a wonderful experience for me. I loved working with the students. I love teaching, and obviously communications was things that I love to teach. So creative writing and creative speaking, and those were kind of or effective writing and effective speaking is what they were called. So it was getting kids ready to go out into the workplace and be maybe better communicators, both in the written word and the spoken word.
Well, that probably helps a bunch with your. Oh, go ahead, Clay. Go.
Yeah, no worries. I with that, I was going to ask, like, were you writing and publishing before then, or when did that kind of start taking off for you?
It was around that time, actually, Clay, that my first book came out. I want to say, actually, you're absolutely right. It was while I was at Lakeland College. A little book for kids called The Cowboy Kid, and it was part of a rodeo trilogy of stories. And the funny thing about that, it was an agriculture college, and so a lot of the kids there maybe weren't in the upper echelon in terms of students at their schools prior to getting there. And I can't tell you how many kids came up to me and said, "You know what, Mr. Poulsen? The first book I ever read was that book you wrote called The Cowboy Kid." And I thought, well, that's okay. I really like that. And of course, since then, writing has become a big part of my life as well.
Now, I don't know if you noticed behind me this picture here.
Yes, I do.
And you might recognize some of that artwork, because back in years past, John Duffy had given me a copy of that artwork, and I had that book when I was a kid as well, because I believe your main character's name was Clay.
That's right. Yeah.
And I had asked Barb about getting a copy. I know she said you guys have been moving around a bit, so there's a fair bit of stuff in storage. And John said he's going to try and find me one here one of these days too. But
I'll get on that. But that's interesting. Now that I look at those pictures, those, of course, were the pictures that John included in the book, and he was the illustrator for the book, and such a talented guy. And so that added, I think, an awful lot to the Cowboy Kid, for sure.
You bet. And tell me a little bit more. I know you and John go way back. You were best men at each other's weddings.
Well, no, he was best man at mine. I think he had a better candidate than me for his.
Oh,
but no, the funny thing about him being best man at our wedding was about I don't know, maybe a week before, he went and broke his arm riding a bronc.
Oh.
So he comes to this thing in a cast on his arm, and he's got his jacket kind of pulled over the cast. But the whole thing, I think he was in terrible pain the whole time, because if you look at the wedding pictures, there's John with this kind of grimace, he's trying to smile, but it's hurting. And but he braved it out, and he was there. But it was, yeah, John was a good friend, and still is, of course.
I think that's just kind of the face he's making, other than when one of his horses bucks a guy off. But
yeah, very similar face.
That's the genuine smile when that happens.
Very
but the rest of the
expression.
time, it's
yeah, I think you're right.
You mentioned, Dave, that you're a baseball guy, and we talked about the 3000 perfs, but a cool project you got to work on was with Keenan Vine. We talked a bit about him, but at the Major League Baseball All-Star game, you had to do a voiceover for a video. So talk about that experience, and you kind of did it in one take, super easy, no big deal, but shed some light on that
well,
kind of side project for you.
Keenan was involved in with the Major League Baseball All-Star, because he's an event producer, and they had him involved, and he came to me and he said, hey, I want you to voice something for me. I think we were at Airdrie Rodeo, and he said, I need you to voice something. And I said, well, yeah, whatever you need, I can do that. And so we and he didn't actually tell me what it was initially, but he gave me a script, and he said, this is kind of an audition tape in a way. So Sean Morton was there talking about music guys and sound guys, and so Sean kind of taped this thing, and then Keenan says, well, by the way, this is for the Major League Baseball All-Star. And I thought, yeah, there's exactly a 1 in 100,000 chance that I get this gig.
Yeah.
But I sent it off before the rodeo was even over at Airdrie. He'd come back to me a day or two later and said, yeah, they really like it, and you better get ready to do the actual thing. So we did it in a studio in Calgary, and it was actually the opening video for the All-Star game.
So cool.
And for me to be able to do that and be a part of that was, as I say, for a baseball guy, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This will surprise you, but I never actually played in the Major League All-Star game.
Oh, what?
So this was,
I would have never guessed.
Hard to believe, I know, but yeah. So that was a really exciting moment for me, for sure.
So how have you been able to evolve over the years and kind of keep the motivation going, stay at the top of your game? What are things that you've been doing? And like, obviously maybe these little side projects help, but what are some of those things that keep you moving along?
Well, I think, part of it is what we talked about earlier, the evolution of not just the presentation of the sport, but the sport itself.
Oh,
You think about the quality of the animals in rodeo now. You think about the quality of the athletes in rodeo now. There's not that many of those weekend cowboys that used to be pretty darn good, but compared to today's actual professional athletes that compete in rodeo, it's a very different thing. You think of the quality of the caliber of the barrel racing horses, for example.
Oh my gosh.
And now breakaway horses,
Yeah.
and all of that. So just watching that evolution and getting to be part of that evolution, I get fired up. I am so fired up to go to Lethbridge. After 3,000 performances, I'm as excited to go to Lethbridge now as I would have been 20 years ago. So I think it doesn't take much, because if you're still a fan, as I am, and I get to watch that sport at the level that it's at now, not hard to take.
Oh, it's cool. And you see the quality competitors we have coming out of Canada, the more people coming up to Canada to compete. Like, you look down the draw for Lethbridge, for instance, you got the top 3 or 4 saddle bronc riders in Canada in the first performance. So it's hard to not get excited for that kind of stuff, right? Like, it's amazing.
Exactly.
What's left on your rodeo bucket list then? Do you feel like you've accomplished everything you've set out to accomplish? Is that something you really thought about, or is there something that's eluding you a little bit that you're kind of after still? What's the story there?
Oh, you look back at it. Somebody asked me the other day, is there a rodeo that you've never done that you wish you had? And yeah, of course it is. I haven't announced every rodeo in Canada and certainly beyond, but probably probably the one rodeo that I've never done that I would have liked to do at some point in my career was Strathmore. And the
Mm,
reason for that is before I ever started being involved in rodeo, I was going to university and I was working in the landscaping business. And I worked on a sod farm out near Strathmore. And one day the boss came out to the sod farm and he said, "Okay, you guys, knock off work for the day. We're going to the rodeo. I'm taking you guys."
nice.
And so he took us guys to the Strathmore Rodeo, which I think, as I recall, this is so long ago, I think it was actually an amateur rodeo at that time.
Mm.
And and so, but man, I was just, wow, this is great. I
Yeah.
love this. And I'll never forget that. And so for that reason, I guess Strathmore's always had a kind of a special place in my heart as just a very, very cool rodeo because of that memory. So I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a bucket list. They've got
Yeah,
great
yeah.
announcers, so that's not something that I'm looking forward to doing because it's not likely to happen. But
Mm,
yeah, I don't know that I have a lot of bucket list things
mm,
because I've been so fortunate, guys, to do a lot of the things that I ever wanted to do,
mhm.
including, for example, working for the Cowboy Channel. Like, how
That's
exciting is
cool.
that?
Yeah.
And last year to be part of the broadcast crew at the very first time that the Cowboy Channel broadcast the Canadian finals, and I got to be part of that team.
Oh,
That that's a pretty cool moment for me that I'll never forget.
oh, that's cool. Well, and speaking of the Cowboy Channel, this segues perfectly into a question Brett Clay has written down.
So, and again, your career has obviously spanned many decades here, and a lot of the time you end up partnering with a little bit younger announcer there in Dustin Edwards. I know him. You two, you work so well. I've never seen you not work well with an announcer, rodeo clown, anything like that. But just tell us a little bit, like when you started, because I know it kind of goes back to the amateur finals partnerships, and it's just carried on so wonderfully throughout the years.
Well, you mentioned Clay. You mentioned the Wild Rose Finals, and I was fortunate to announce that event a number of times. And it's interesting because the very first time I ever worked with Brett Gardner was at the Wild Rose Finals, and the very first time I ever worked with Dustin Edwards was at the Wild Rose Finals. So, and you talk about those two guys, and those are probably the two guys that I work with the most. I'm very fortunate to have worked with a number of guys, and there's so many really, really talented announcers and people that are just great to work with. But in those two guys, you talk about chemistry, and when you're in an announcer stand or in a broadcast booth with somebody for a number of hours at a time, and you're talking about things, that chemistry is so important. And fortunately for me, with those guys and certainly others as well, uh, that chemistry is there, and you feel that bond with the guy, and you're a team. You're not fighting against one another, and oh, I need more microphone time than that guy. That sort of attitude just doesn't work. And so yeah, I've been really fortunate to work with amazing people, and talking about Dustin. Um, Talk about another funny story. We were actually doing a live stream broadcast from the Canadian Finals Rodeo one year, and that year it was brought to us by the uh, VRCA group came up and kind of they brought a trailer, and we actually sat in the gooseneck of the trailer. But the problem was, so it's out in the parking lot, and Dustin and I are in the gooseneck of this trailer, and the temperature outside the trailer was like minus 32.
Oh,
The temperature inside the trailer was maybe minus 29. I have never been colder in my life, and Dustin and I laugh about that. And it was one of the memorable performances, maybe for all the we couldn't get out of there fast enough when it was over and try to warm up, but that was that was another memorable moment. And thankfully it was a guy that I that I like a lot and spend a lot of time with, because we kind of shared that experience. It would have been horrible if I had been somebody up there that I didn't like, but there's not too many of the
Get some
announcers that
snuggling.
fall into that category.
Yeah, and talk about Dustin, you guys have worked together so much. You've kind of developed a secret handshake. You guys won your first 50-50 this past summer. Talk about some of those
Yeah.
fun moments, how that stuff's worked
Oh,
out.
yeah. Yeah, we won the 50-50 actually at Airdrie Pro Rodeo, and it was a fairly handy one. I think we both got over $1,000 out of it.
Oh,
And
baby.
people said, "Oh, well, you must be close to breaking even." No, no. Actually, I think we have to win it about 5 more times
Oh,
before we'd actually be close to breaking even. But we finally did get off the schneid on the 50-50 and win one finally.
oh. Well, and speaking of people who kind of been instrumental in your career, people you worked with a lot closely, your wife Barb is another one of those people. I've been fortunate to work with her for the past couple of years at the Canadian Pro Rodeo Association. She's a rock star to say the least. But talk a little bit about Barb and how much she means to this whole journey.
Well, I guess there's 2 things I would say about that. First of all, I don't know that there's a person more dedicated
Oh my
to the
gosh.
sport of and the Canadian Professional Rodeo Association than Barb. I don't say that because she's my wife. I say it because it's true.
Hmm.
She's just incredibly devoted to and works a ridiculous number of hours, and that I wouldn't,
Hmm.
but she does, and does it willingly, and because she wants the very, very best for professional rodeo in Canada, and has done that for an awful lot of years.
Oh my
But the
gosh.
second part of it is, I think, for an announcer like me, or a rodeo clown, or people that are on the road with this industry a lot, or for that matter, competitors, we're away from home an awful lot.
Hmm.
And so we have to rely on the people who aren't. They're back home looking after things while we're away. And you're away from your family, you're away from your kids, and all of that. And I can't say the words thank you don't even begin to cover the gratitude that I feel to Barb and to the other members of my family, my kids, and who had to, hey, Dad's leaving again,
Hmm.
and he's heading off for a few more days, and he'll be back in next Monday or Tuesday, whatever it is, and there was never any begrudging of that, or
Hmm.
any animosity about it. It was like, hey, Dad, go get him. Can't wait till you get home, and you feel so grateful for family for that.
Well, and you guys have been able to work closely, and I guess I should say that if there was never an unsung hero award for pro rodeo given out, I feel like Barb would have won it like 10 or 15 times over by now. But you guys have been able to work so closely together at the CFR and everywhere. Like being able to share those moments, like how awesome has that been as well?
Well, we've never killed each other, and so right off the top, I would say that's a positive.
Yep.
Um, I mean, anybody who works, when you're working together as well as living together, there's going to be moments that are probably a little bit more challenging than are seen on that you let the public see. So we have our discussions, but I think what really drives both of us is a mutual respect for what the other person does,
Hmm.
and how hard the other person works. And as long as those ingredients are there, you work through the rough patches, and you celebrate the big moments and the happy moments. And I think about, certainly one of my proudest moments in my rodeo life was when I won Cowboy of the Year in 2015.
Hmm.
And of course, the big thing about that is they keep it as a complete secret from you.
Yeah.
And and I remember Murray Milan telling me, "Yeah, I need you to come down to the players' box, and you're going to have to escort somebody into the arena who's elderly, and I need you to help with that." So I do. I run down there. I'm looking for this person that I'm supposed to, and I can't find her. And I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I've let Murray down. I've lost this person, and I'm supposed to." And in the meantime, Barb's there, and of course, she's been part of this whole thing. And suddenly I hear Brett Gardner talking about somebody, and they're doing the Cowboy of the Year award. And I realized, oh my God, and it was the most amazing moment. And she was part of that, which makes her sneaky among her other attributes. But so yeah, so that was one that she was, and she was so proud of me, and my other family members were there, and that was pretty darn exciting.
Yeah, I have to say this last year, getting to be involved with the rodeo news and writing and working with Barb on that has been just a tremendous experience for me. And again, just getting to see all that she is involved in is just remarkable. And again, like you say, just both of you, just such an incredible contributions to the sport, and just we're definitely grateful for all of that.
Okay, well, let's knock it off, okay? Because she's listening right now.
I figured she had to be close.
She'll
I
be
was
listening.
hoping
She's gonna have to
heard
start
some of
walking
that.
sideways through the doorways. It's gonna be hard for her getting around the house. Yeah, yeah. So I want to shift gears to CFR. Clay, do you have anything else before we move into any of that stuff? You're good to go. Okay, so CFR 50 back in Edmonton. The CFR has been around for 50 years. It's pretty cool. It's an exciting year, but let's first get through some of the moments of those 50 years that stand out to you, David, and how it's changed. And heading back to Edmonton, how exciting that is, I guess.
Yeah, I first announced at the Canadian Finals where I believe it was 19, I want to say 1984 or 85.
Mhm.
And I worked with Jack Danes the very first time. And that was, can I tell another Jack Danes story?
Of course, yeah.
I've
Hit us
got
with it.
2,000
Yeah.
of them. So as
Yeah,
long as
hit us with it. Yeah.
So Jack and I are working the CFR, and Jack obviously is going to announce the saddle bronc riding because I mean he's a Mr. Saddle Bronc guy. So he says, "Well, okay, I'll announce the saddle bronc riding, but I don't think it would be a very good idea for me to announce Dwayne, who was in that finals." He said, "So when I get to Dwayne, I want you to jump in and you take it from there." And I said, "Sure, yeah, whatever, Jack. I'm happy to do that." So he starts in on the bronc riding. He gets to Dwayne. He doesn't even slow down. He just keeps right through the whole Dwayne thing, and then the rest of the bronc riding. And so then he comes to me before the next performance. He says, "Yeah, I know. I kind of got excited there when Dwayne was riding, and so I forgot to shut up and let you in. So tonight I want you to take Dwayne, okay?" "No problem, Jack. I'm there for you. I'll take care of it." So again, we get to the rock riding. No slowdown at all. He just roars right on. Does a great job with Dwayne, who makes another great ride, whatever. And so finally, the third day comes to me. He says, "Now look, I know I kind of messed up those first two, but I need you to take care." I said, "Jack, you're doing the whole bronc riding. I'll
No,
just
I'm
watch and listen,
yeah.
okay?" So we worked that out. But I thought that was just so funny because he's so enthusiastic and quite frankly, a figure in rodeo that we darn sure miss.
Mhm.
He was an awesome guy. But yeah, we all have many wonderful Jack.
Well, and so your role has like evolved quite a bit over the years with the CFR. Like, so along with that evolution, like how, like again through your eyes, like what's been the biggest noticeable changes with the CFR? Obviously, we talked about stock and competitors, production, all that kind of stuff. But what are some things that stand out to you in that regard?
Well, I think I look at just for example, now we have Americans competing at the
Mm.
Canadian Finals Rodeo, and we've had some American champions, people like Shane Hanchy, who's won 4 times the tie down roping, and is just such a great competitor. And I think that's added another element to it.
Hmm.
And maybe raised our Canadians game a little bit, even to, hey, we want to beat those guys. And lots of times we do, but sometimes we don't. And I think that's been I think a positive as well, as long as we don't have so many Americans that we cut out deserving Canadians, but I think that's been really cool.
Hmm.
I think you think about the money. Let's talk about the money
Oh my
that
gosh.
these guys are riding, and good. They deserve it. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
and finally, the money is starting to get to where it needs to be for the athletes to be competing for. And I think that adds again. Now you get those athletes that are so prepared,
Hmm.
and not just physically, but we talk about the mental and
Oh.
physical preparation that these guys go through, guys and gals, by the
Hmm.
way,
Hmm.
go through to be at the Canadian Finals Rodeo and be at their best and actually go out there to try to win. I think that's another whole element
Oh my
that
gosh.
we didn't see that early on in my career. You saw guys that wanted to go and win, and if they did, they won a little bit of money, and that was cool. But now it's a major sport, and it's a major championship within
Mhm.
that sport, and that's where it should be.
And so we're moving back to Edmonton for the 50th year, and this is no slight to Red Deer whatsoever. I feel like the CFR the last few years is as good as it's ever been, and the production there was top notch. But what does this move back to the City of Champions mean for rodeo and the CFR itself?
Well, I think, and I'm with you. I think the 5-year hiatus that we were in Red
It was
Deer,
a good thing.
oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I got to be part of some of those broadcasts and some of the in-house announcing as well. And I was thrilled. I was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely thrilled to be part of the Canadian Finals Rodeo in Red Deer, because I don't think it took a step back at all.
No.
It was different than other years, but it was equally good in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion. They did a terrific job in Red Deer. But there's a few interesting things that have happened. In addition to going back to Edmonton for the 50th year, and let's face it, Edmonton was where it started. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool. It's come full circle and it's back there for the 50. But the other thing that's really interesting is the dates, because that
Mm.
changes everything, moves everything up a month. Some rodeos that used to count for this finals now will count for the following year. So the season is now abridged a little bit. And Dustin and I were talking about that at Pincher Creek, like how important are these rodeos, because the season is shorter than it has been. You cannot have a very long lapse of slump time. You got to be on your game right from the get-go and right through the entire season to be ready for the Canadian finals. And the other thing that having those dates when they are is it enables folks, and again, some of the Americans who wouldn't be able to come up here in November because they've got other things, to try to get to the Canadian finals in October. And you talk about some of the great champions that are up here trying to get to our Canadian finals, and how cool is that?
And you talk about the money, you mentioned that earlier, like going to the season side of the things, like there's so much money available, and like the races at the top are really super tight. The race that any event, you look at the thing from 10th to 25th, there's people who have a shot to get into the finals with, even in this last week and a half with the amount of money that's left.
Well, that's it. I mean, you talk about Lethbridge, which is a tour rodeo.
Hmm.
You talk about Armstrong and the tour finals.
Mhm.
That's two, really big rodeos that are very, very important. So yeah, there's a ton of money still out there. Barb and I were actually looking at kind of the bubble watch sort
Oh,
of thing. Guys that are
Mhm.
12th, guys that are 13th, 14th. But you're right, Wacey. There's people who are outside the 15 right now who
hmm.
could get in,
Oh, it's
and
crazy.
which I think is great.
You look at the rough stock side of things. I was talking to Dakota Butter last night. He said like one a couple years ago he won 20,000 between all three of those rodeos in BC. Like you can win it. Like Lonnie West, like Clay and I talked about him in the top of the show. Like he won Pitcher Creek, only guy to stay on, and now but he still kind of has a shot to sneak in there if he goes on a heater and wins a bunch of money over the next week in a bit. It's crazy to
Sure.
think.
And it's neat when you see guys who get hot
Hmm.
at this time of the year. Yeah, they can make huge moves, and not just in terms of making the finals, but being that season leader. A
Oh,
lot of guys, if you're up in the top 3 or 4 in Canada right now, your goal is to be the season leader.
oh yeah.
The really cool saddle that goes to the season leader at our Night of Champions. But the other thing is having that boost. You want to
The head
be there
start.
when you go into you're leading the pack going into the Canadian finals. That's a good thing.
Well, and
Well, and I
there's
know
one.
Logan Bird here a couple weeks ago talked about, from a timed event contestant perspective, that jump in the dates on that CFR is going to be just so much better for a lot of them competitors, because they're going to go in at the top of their game. There's not that gap where,
Mhm.
again, you're in October trying to practice when it's cold on calves that are too big, and whereas all your guys that are rodeoing down south have been competing at the top of their game still. So I think it's going to be a really interesting dynamic seeing those guys coming in rodeoing up here one weekend and then going into the CFR the next.
Yeah, you make a great point, Clay. That's really interesting because you know, you don't think about that, but that
Hmm.
gap, and you're not practicing, or you're not practicing in great circumstances or whatever. I think our athletes are going to be so ready, maybe more ready than other years, going into an October 2nd to 5th Canadian finals.
Well, and you talk about the one last performance. Like Clay brought up that point earlier, before you hopped on, Dave, is that you don't have that opportunity like that even for Zeke, like bucking off in the first round when there's only 5 rounds is a bit more detrimental than when you have 5 horses or bulls or calves or steers or runs left. Like it's you got to be coming in top of your game and ready to make some moves that first night.
You can't take a performance off because
Mm.
you've suddenly just done that with 20% of the rodeo, and that could be a disaster. So, no, you're right. They're going to have to come guns blazing, performance number one, ready to go.
One of the really cool elements of this year's CFR is going to be having breakaway roping as part of the whole CFR for the first time ever. And that makes kind of a sneaky, but one of the ways like Rodeo Canada is kind of leading the way on professional rodeo stand the point of things of having it as part of the finals for the first time ever. So what is that going to mean to the gals competing and then to the rodeo as a whole?
Well, I think first of all, to the gals competing, it's awesome because obviously they can win some more money,
Hmm.
and it makes that title, yeah, I think even more meaningful when it's over 5 performances. But the other thing is, let's face it, when we introduced them, when I say we, I mean the commission and the people who run the Canadian finals. When breakaway roping was introduced at the finals, it was an instant hit.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like from the moment the first cowgirl went out there to rope, the fans just got behind it and
Oh
loved it right
yeah.
from the very beginning, and have continued to ever since. So if there's a group of athletes who deserve to be there for all five, yeah, those gals certainly fit into that category, and I think it's going to be great for the finals itself.
Like you say, it's a fan favorite. It's fast, and I feel like, and this is across the board. I would say on all the events, like the competition is as good as it's ever been, in my opinion, in Canada.
Oh,
Like you see, just like Shea Beaver broke the record, then tied her record already this year, and there's been sub 2 second runs all over the place. So it's going to be really really exciting when we're up in Edmonton.
yeah. And you know, we go back to how tough it is to make the Canadian finals, which is the other element that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
being in that top 12 is absolutely amazing. But you look at Shea Beaver, reigning champion, twice she's been 1.6. Guess where
Mhm.
Shea Beaver is in the standings right now? She's outside the
It's
top 12.
crazy. It's
So, I
crazy.
mean, that's how good that event is and how competitive that event is. And I'm personally, because she's my neighbor, I'm betting that she's going to be in the top 12 before it all rings down. But that's isn't that interesting
Oh, it's
that
awesome.
something like that.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah,
It's gonna be.
the number of girls that have been perennial CFR contenders and like Kendall Pearson champion multiple times that's still on the outside right now. It's as many names that aren't in that top 12 that we usually expect as there are in it.
Yeah, well, Kendall, of course, won the first two. Now, in fairness, she probably hasn't been to as many rodeos in Canada as some years
Mhm.
because she's
No.
really working hard down in the U.S. where she is in the top 10,
Mhm, mhm.
which is great to see. But you know, yeah, you're absolutely right. And you look at somebody like her, and you know, there again, like she was so dominant that first year,
Oh, nobody
and
could touch her.
and similarly the second year.
Hmm.
Now, even Shea, when she won it last year, it was close, like right to the very end.
Hmm.
She won it, but she didn't dominate like uh, like Kendall had in the first couple of years. So it's really competitive, just as it is. I mean, is there an event that you can look at and say, yeah, this one's kind of decided? I mean,
No,
you know, yeah,
maybe the saddle bronc
there's an
riding.
obvious guy in the saddle bronc riding that kind of falls into that category.
Yeah.
But even there, you know, he's not out of sight. If
No.
somebody gets
No.
hot at the finals, they can make this thing a race. Um, and I look at all of the races and I think I can't pick a winner
No,
in very many events right now. You know,
it's so tough.
I mean, even the favorites like a Zeke or like a Scott Gentner or people like that. There's going to be a tremendous battle, I think, at
Oh,
CFR 50 for championships.
Well,
I look back at a conversation with Logan Bird, and he's talking about how he's just bad. Like his motivation for the season leader title is to get ahead of Haven because he knows going
Oh,
in Edmonton, that guy's a tough dude to beat when all chips are on the table.
well, and that's a smart. You're absolutely right. And I talked to Logan not that long ago
Yeah.
about that very thing, and that's exactly right, because I think he's got about a $4,000 lead, and would love. I mean, obviously, he'd love to be season leader. I don't think he ever has won that
No,
award,
no.
though he's had such an amazing career. I'm not sure about that. I might be wrong on the season leader with him, but nevertheless, if he can be there and have a bit of a comfort zone ahead of Haven, who is going to light it up at the
Oh
Canadian,
my gosh,
because he
yeah.
lights it up everywhere. So
Yeah.
that's what a pretty good strategy. If I can get far enough ahead of this guy that maybe I'll have a bit of a cushion going in, that's better for Logan Burt or anybody else who can get ahead of Haven.
Yeah, well, and I was just going to circle back to that breakaway rope. And when you were talking about the dominance of Kendall when it first started, and Logan, coming back to him, he kind of spoke about when breakaway roping first kind of got off the ground. The people that really had the head start were the young people that were either high school or college rodeo, and like a girl like Kendall would have been, right? Because so many of them now, I think a big part of that competitiveness, you look at someone like Chelsea Moore. Well, for a long time, barrel racing was her only avenue at the professional level, whereas these last few years, she's been able to crack that rope out again. And you see so many of them that maybe they were doing it a bit at some of these all-girl rodeos or events like that, but now that they can see that I can make just as much money on this as I can in the barrel race, and that's I think one of the things that we can definitely attribute that level of competition kind of catching up to the event.
Well, you're absolutely right, of course, because breakaway roping had been in existence for a long, long time at the high school level and in amateur rodeos and semi-pro rodeos, but it hadn't been at the pro level. So, yeah, the first people that are going to have the first big jump at it are those ones who've been doing it. But now we've got, some of the older cowgirls, and by older, I mean adult, not old people, but that are really, really pretty darn good. And they were already very capable horse people through their barrel racing or whatever else they were doing. And now here they are being outstanding competitors in the breakaway roping. And it makes it, and I think that's one of the reasons that competition is so fierce now.
I think another thing I was just going to add on that is, for better or worse, it's made all of the rope horses in the world a lot more expensive. It's definitely added to the ability for those people that are that handy, and I mean, a lot of horses that maybe were good heel horses or head horses have added that breakaway rope into the event, and it's raised the whole rodeo horse training level, I think, to where you're seeing these record prices. And
yeah, no, you're right. And the other thing is it's another element in the horse industry is now raising and training great breakaway roping horses, and that's good. Anything that helps out the horse industry is a good thing for all of us.
Yeah, it's wild to see the evolution of that too, kind of alongside the whole rodeo production, everything we've kind of talked about today. Okay, Dave, before we let you go, we're heading in, like we've talked about a bunch. We're heading into the last week and a bit of the season, heading into the CFR, but I want to get some of your bold predictions as we move through the end of the season here and head into the CFR. If you give me give us a couple of those. We've been kind of gathering them up as we moved along here.
Bold predictions. Well, okay, I'll throw out. I don't know how bold they are. As Dustin says, I choose the low hanging fruit every chance I get. But when I think about the bareback riding, let's look at the bareback riding. You've got a guy, Oren Larson, who is sitting right now. He's leading the Canadian standings, not by a lot, but he's still. And right now, he is knocking on the door of the top 15 in the world. He's only like a few $100 out of the top 15 in the world. I think, and this is a guy who's been to 9 NFRs, who won the 2019 Canadian title, but missed a third of the season this year. For him to be doing what he's doing right now, and if he makes the national finals rodeo, having missed as much time as he did in all those amazing big money rodeos, I think this is going to be one of the most amazing accomplishments of his career.
Oh yeah.
So I certainly would lean towards him to be certainly a threat at the Canadian Finals Rodeo, Oren Larson. And there's just so many really, really good guys, including Clint Lay, who won a couple here this past weekend. He's always there and knocking on the door. Danton Birch is having, I think, kind of a, I won't say a breakout year because he's had a lot of good years, but this is maybe the best one yet.
When he's going, he's so hard to beat.
He really is. He
rides
really
so
is.
well.
So I just think, I look at we talked about people like Scott Gunther. There's a tough choice right there. He's only won it 4 times and is leading the way again. But what a great athlete. And, so often when you say the guy's a great cowboy or a great cowgirl, and then the very next words out of your mouth are, and they're a great person.
Yeah.
And certainly that absolutely applies in the case of Scott Gunther and people like Logan Bird. Logan Bird is one of my favorite interviews. And I told him this not very long ago. I said, I have never, ever interviewed you yet and not learned something.
He's great.
He's so full of information. He's a walking encyclopedia when it comes to tie down roping. And I love talking to the guy because I learn something every single time. So those would be 2 or 3 of people that I'm looking to watch for. And I don't know, the barrel racing is tough. Like there's just so many really, really top caliber barrel racers that, 2 people that I think I would like to mention as we wrap up are the Whiteside girls, Brady and Kylie, because we talked about breakaway roping and we talked about barrel racing. How about 2 girls who absolutely excel at both of them?
Oh, they're amazing girls.
They're tough.
Yeah, there's just so much talent right there, and they're a couple I would watch for them in both of those events. They could win both of them, and maybe one will win one and one win the other. Wouldn't surprise me because they're just that talented. So I would throw them into my mix of heady predictions. I wouldn't bet any money on any of my predictions, by the way.
Disclaimer.
Just a cautionary.
Writing them all down, Dave. Yeah. You sounded so sure of things.
Yeah, it's like betting on me in the 50-50. Just because I won one doesn't mean I'll ever win another. But
well, and one last CFR bold prediction question, kind of I want to put your way, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how realistic is it that anybody touches Zeke or can catch Zeke? I know there's a chance, but I mean, given that guy an almost full round head start on you heading into the CFR, it's going to be tough to catch him.
If I'm a bronc rider, I'm looking at ways I can maybe run over him in the parking lot. I can kind of even things up just a little bit, I mean, yeah, he comes in as the favorite but you know what? He would come in as the favorite if he was 5,000 behind everybody.
Oh, I know. It's crazy.
Because he's Zeke and he's just that good. But bronc riding in Canada, and you guys, I'm sure, have talked about it a million times.
Oh my gosh.
Where we're at, and we're not done bringing up great young bronc riders. I look out there, here comes another one. Here comes another one. It's just amazing. And so at some point, whether it's this year or not, some of those guys are going to catch up and get closer to Zeke. And it might even be this year. And we could have a pretty good race in the bronc riding, just as I think we will in a lot of the events at the CFR.
It's going to be great.
Interesting note on Zeke. Yesterday, I happened to be looking at the rough stock stats online for the PRCA, and cloudy skies seems to be his kryptonite. So, I mean, maybe if they figure out a way for him to draw that horse 3 or 4 times, you never know. It's one of those things. But he's the bronc riding. You're right about it. It's tough. Now, I wanted to ask you about. I had this story, another you and John Duffy story. I can't remember if it was you or John had told me about a horse that you guys had called Luke the Drifter.
Yeah, Luke the Drifter. Well, John, one thing we haven't talked about, I actually did have some bucking horses for a time, and which was one of my most exciting moments, to have a horse go to the Canadian Finals or the Calgary Stampede. And I didn't have a lot of those, but I did have a couple. But John and I kind of were partnered up on some bucking horses. And John was putting on a kind of a committee rodeo out at his ranch, and convention rodeo kind of a deal. And so as we're getting ready, and he said, I want you to shoot, boss, and I'll be behind the chutes getting the horse ready. And I said, yeah, no problem. She said, I bought us a horse, and I just got him, and we're going to buck him tonight. This is going to be the first time. And his name is Luke the Drifter, and I'm very excited. So, and I said, well, if you're excited, I'm excited, because this could be great. And I love the name Luke the Drifter. That's cool. So we get partway into the event, and we're bucking some horses, and now it's time for Luke the Drifter and some guys on him. And we swing the gate open. Luke the Drifter does not only not buck, he doesn't even run. He kind of trots a little bit out there and then kind of slows to a walk. He walks down to the other end to the timed event and kind of smells the timed event chute. That was the most exciting thing that Luke the Drifter ever did that night. And it was the last night of his career as a bucking horse. I think we retired him shortly after that. But yeah, Luke the Drifter never made it to the Canadian final.
Oh man, that's so good. Well, Clay, I don't got anything else for Dave here, unless you got something else you want to wrap it up. But I guess that's a good place to leave it. A fun way to end the show. But Dave, we thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Congratulations on 3,000 perfs. It's been a pleasure to work alongside you and Barb for as many years I've been able to now, and you're an inspiration to all of us, and we'll be seeing you down the road very soon.
Hey, thanks you guys. I really appreciate your time today. This was fun.
You bet. Take care.
Right on. This has been episode 20 of the Short Round. Stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Thanks once again to the legendary Dave Poulsen for taking some time to chat with us. He's an amazing man, and we can't congratulate him enough on hitting 3,000 performances. I don't know if that's a record that'll ever be broken or what the record is for Canadian rodeo announcers, but 3,000 professional rodeo perfs is quite the feat.
To keep track of it, even.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
It's similar to Scott Schiffner when he retired from bull riding and hearing that he had kept track of every bull and had the tally of his career. It's just, yeah, you get those numbers for those legends like that, and it's pretty incredible.
Well, one kind of little tidbit that I wanted to shout out Dave for. He's been doing lots of voiceover work the last few days, or last year, I guess I should say. But he's kind of built a reputation of being a one take wonder. And I was talking, I think it was with Keenan Vine actually, how they had Dave come in and do some voiceover work, and he just did it perfectly in one take, and they're like, okay, I guess that's good. Like, nice one, man. So there's Dave. Dave is one of the best around, and he's been an influence for a lot of announcers in Canada and just people in general. He's one of the best kind of people, him and his wife Barb. So we appreciate everything he does and continues to do for the sport. But speaking of Keenan Vine, this brings us right into that, a nice segue into the next kind of rodeo preview for this coming weekend. So we got the Lethbridge Pro Rodeo, kind of it's part of the SMS Pro Rodeo Tour. We got Nanton and Okotoks kind of filling up the weekend here, but let's start off with a preview of Lethbridge, Clay.
You bet. And again, Keenan kind of came on board with the committee there. They had paused on having that rodeo for a little while and everything, but have brought it back and brought it up to that level of being a tour rodeo. Again, that country, there's a lot of rodeo contestants in that area, and to see what they've been doing, what Keenan and his group have,
and rodeo fans.
And I mean, that big grandstand, it gets packed.
Just bumping.
They fill it up, and yeah, just the level of professionalism that they bring there. Kessler's stock, that's synonymous with that rodeo and crew, and the whoop up downs, they know how to whoop it up there for sure, and really have a good time. And I know Dave and Barb and the crew will be there as well, and having a blast. And again, that's that last opportunity for contestants to really show it up and earn those tour points to get in. Armstrong Rodeo is also counted for that, but it's a big shot here for a lot of contestants that we've been talking about in these last few weeks, and those other ones that have been sneaking under the wire here as well.
So yeah, it's gonna be a great rodeo to follow along with. That's one you can watch on the Cowboy Channel if you so choose. Cowboy Channel Plus app, I guess. But anyways, it's gonna play a pivotal role in how that top 10 in the SMS Tour standing shakes out. So it's it's not over in Armstrong, but you're going to see some of the top few positions, I think, solidified after this weekend in Lethbridge. And they do a great job on the production side. They have the relay races, there's a fair, there's everything you could ever want in a rodeo. So if you're in the area, go check it out in Lethbridge. And then let's get into just I guess an hour and a half up the road. That's where I was yesterday doing Nick's wedding. It is Nanton, Alberta. It's their first kind of coming back into pro rodeo in a long time as well. So that's what we got. What can we expect out of Nanton this weekend, Clay?
Again, you're gonna see a great rodeo put on. Nanton, although this is their first foray back into professional rodeo
Mm-hmm.
for a while, that arena is busy nonstop year round. Well, summertime. Yeah, they got the two pens going there. I mean, they host high school rodeos, amateur rodeos, their nightly rodeos throughout the summer. And
Mm-hmm.
again, they've built a lot of cowboys and cowgirls inside of that arena. And again, they found an opportunity here to honor the local legend Clark Slosher, who we unfortunately lost in January. This year, it's going to be known as the Clark Slosher Memorial Rodeo. Seeing what's going to take place with that naming in the future. Again, there's always that possibility they'll honor more than just Clark, but for
Mm-hmm.
this year, again, it's a wonderful tribute to a cowboy that Canadian champion in the wild cow milking and the wild horse racing back in the day, competed in a lot of events in his competition career, and most notably, I think for a lot of us was a long time CPRA judge, competed or judged at the CFR 22 times,
Mm-hmm.
was honored in 2007 by the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame here in Canada in their legends category, and that's the best way to describe him, was truly as a legend. The Slosher name is synonymous with
Mm-hmm.
that area, and he is just such a huge part of it. And we see the Bird family again, all of their endeavors and things that they do within the rodeo industry and the Western way of life, and this is another step in the direction that they're really throwing weight behind. We see Shauna is your main contact there, but all of them are just going to make sure that this production is going to go well. And you got the Moxa family bringing stock. It's going to be a great rodeo as well. And just again, from a contestant standpoint, these three rodeos are so close. It's a nice little
Oh, that's all
circuit
rip
thing on the
around. Yeah.
weekend. Like anytime you can get a two or three rodeo run like that, it's awesome. One of them being a tour rodeo, so we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna we're gonna see some great action this weekend.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome, and it's kind of funny to think of the rodeo schedule not having Nanton on the list. So it's good to have them back, and it's gonna be cool. It'll be cool to see it operate in that facility too, because they have the timed event arena separate from the Rough Duck arena. So it'll be a fun little weekend to check out some quality rodeo action in Nanton. So again, if you're in the area, check it out. And then finally, kind of completing the loop, we got the Okotoks Pro Rodeo hosted in Millerville, but that's always a great rodeo. They put so much time and effort into making it great production. They bring the Volt stock along. It's going to be an awesome weekend at Okotoks.
And I happen to notice again their committee contact Travis Whiteside is a 2024 Rodeo Hall of Fame inductee. So again, like the other rodeos, you've got tremendous experience in the rodeo arena that's guiding this committee, and that Millerville track and arena. That's where my last bronc riding buckle came from, was at the amateur rodeo there the one summer. and
Right on.
and so yeah, we know that Okotoks, I mean, it's just down the road, and that committee decided over the years that moving outdoors was better suited
Hmm.
for them. I know they tried building an arena just beside their hockey rink there for a few years, but you can't argue with the setup there in
The facility
Millerville.
there
It's
is world class. It's perfect setting, and really and truly, it's only 15 minutes out of town, so can't beat it.
and maybe time for one more funny story. The one year, the Vernon brothers, their place is a mile, if
Scary,
that.
scary close to the
By
the
the
Village
time
track.
you
Yeah.
by the time you get maybe from the Vernon residence to the rodeo grounds. And one year I was watching at Calgary, and they said, "Well, Wayne's got some horses he wants to buck out at Millerville, and I was like, well, sure, yeah, I got my saddle. Let's go. So we finished watching the perf, and I drive out there, and those guys, I think, were already out there and everything, and they get me on this horse, and he was nice. Felt really good and everything. And after I'm done, they were like, oh man, yeah, that was way better than the time we bucked him just before you got here. He was no good that trip. I don't know whatever happened to that horse, but yeah, he was just good for
Oh,
an afternoon trip of practice.
that sounds like that's a classic Vernon boys story. Those guys are quite the cards.
No doubt. It's yeah, watching those three boys together is
Oh
it's
man,
interesting.
one of my favorite moments from those guys is the it would have been like one of the first couple Canadian downhill ski races on Lake Louise there. And they like the so at the end of every day we had the stampede race. The first one down the mountain wins the buckle. And we were looking back and I remember going down and I beside kind of out of the corner of my eye, I see a huge wreck happen, like 4 or 5 people go down. And then we get back and we're watching the replay of the race down at the thing, and I think it was Casey and oh, which brother was it? I can't think about it, but Casey was involved in this. And
I
I
have
remember
no
that
doubt that Casey was involved in
yeah,
that.
and I remember the all three brothers were kind of giving each other shit for who started the crash and got them out of the race, but that was like one of the most funny moments I've ever seen of those guys. But they're good people and always good for a laugh, the old Vernon boys.
Yeah, shenanigans is
There you
just the
go.
best way to describe what you'll find when you hang out long enough with the Verdon brothers.
Oh
But
man.
great guys.
Oh, so good. Well, Clay, I think that's gonna wrap it up for episode 20. It's been a good one, and I'm excited to we're gonna catch back up with the half point next week as we head into Armstrong. We're gonna have a preview of the weekend, kind of what who's on the bubble, what the SMS Tour finals are shaping up like. So it's gonna be good to get back on that. And yeah, it's been a good show, good to catch up, and we'll catch you for the half point episode 5, I guess it'll be. Okay, this has been episode 20 of the short round. Once again, stay up to date with everything you need to know at prorodeocanada.com or rodeocanada.com. Geez, I don't even know what the website is. I work for them. Rodeocanada.com is where you can find all the website info. And also we're always updating social media at prorodeocanada/CPRA. And yeah, we'll catch you all on the other side. Adios.